I knew what had happened back there. I worked it all out. Precious picked up her drink carton and sucked on her straw. It was a scientific phenomenon. As soon as we left the house of spiders, we'd gone to the burger restaurant at the nearby mall. That was where Precious explained what had really happened. In that morbid house, Rain looked at her confused. What are you talking about? What's it got to do with science? I agreed. It was just a weird old abandoned house with a body in the basement and a woman who got away. I hesitated, wasn't it? No, said Precious with a shake of her head. It was a time warp. What do you mean? I demanded. We entered a time warp, like stepping back into another world. Actually, a series of different worlds. Each part of the house was a different terrifying world. And that's how a single-story house should have a basement and a second floor. Once I had that figured out, I knew how to save the woman and us too. When we left the house, we left the time warp. It was as simple as that. And that's why the woman changed when she left the house. After all those years, she became alive again. Rain scowled, her fingers drumming on the table. But I still don't get it. How come that woman was able to smash a hole in the brick wall? Ah, said Precious lightly. She thought she was cursed. She was living in a time warp and trapped there by fear. That brick wall was another barrier she feared. But I knew that she had the power to overcome her fears. When she knocked a hole in the wall, she set herself free of her fears. She flashed a knowing smile. A lot of people live like that woman did. They let their secret fears control their lives, like their secret fear of spiders, or snakes, or sharks, or drowning, whatever. What they don't realize is that they can learn to face their fears and overcome them. Then they can set themselves free. It's kind of like mind over matter. You think your fears are so great that you can't do anything about them. But in fact, you can. The truth is, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. Wow, I said in amazement, looking at Precious girl in a new light. She was a very smart girl, so the house was a time warp full of avenging spiders. And when we entered it, we got trapped in a time warp too, and trapped by our own fears. Exactly, said Precious. But what if somebody else went inside that house? Asked Rain. Then they would enter the time warp too, Precious answered. The only way they could escape would to overcome their fears of death and spiders. So we were lucky, I commented. Precious nodded. Exactly, she said again. Suddenly she leapt out of her seat. The drinks fell from her hands. Her screams echoed around the restaurant. There, climbing her leg, was a gigantic black spider.